show that tackles the big issues affecting the BVI and the rest of the Caribbean. Searches for answers to today's big questions and gives viewers a unique perspective on developing stories. Follow the big story with me, Kathy Richards, only on GTV. This show is brought to you by the National Bank of the Virgin Islands, Cyril B. Ramney Tertola Pier Park, NV Salon Spa Nail and Barbershop, HOV Medical, and Digicel. Sign up for Digicel Plus Home Light Bundles, faster internet, movies, and sports. Kathy Richards here. I want to thank you so much for joining us for this special edition of The Big Story. I'm delighted to be in the company of His Excellency the Governor, Mr. Daniel Pruce. First of all, I want to say season's greetings. It's going to be your first Christmas in the Virgin Islands.
Yes, thank you, Kathy, and the same to you. And it's great to have the opportunity to speak to you today. And isn't Christmas amazing here in the Virgin Islands? I've already seen all sorts of festivities and celebrations, which have just been incredible.
And I see you're getting your decorations all set, and I hope to find my gift under that Christmas tree.
Well, it depends if Santa thinks whether you've been a good girl or not, I suppose, whether you get a gift.
Santa, I've been good. Naughty or nice? Nice. Governor, I thought this is just the right atmosphere and time for us to look back at your stay from the time you got here, coming down to the end of the year.
Yes.
I know we would have had conversations prior to now about your set priorities and your goals as governor here in the Virgin Islands. As we come down, we wind down, we say farewell to 2024. How are you seeing those goals materializing, or are they loggerheads?
Thank you, Kathy. So you're right, I'm coming towards the end of my first year here. I started at the very end of January, so I've just got 1 month to go for my first anniversary. But inevitably, as you say, as you approach the end of the calendar year, you do look back on the previous months. And when I was sworn in, I set out on that day 3 priorities for myself as governor, which will extend throughout the whole of my 3-year tenure. The first was security. So the very, very important constitutional responsibility that the governor has to preserve the security of the islands. And I feel that very personally as governor, the duty to do my best to keep people safe. Secondly, I was very conscious that there was an important contribution for this office to make in terms of governance of the islands, and in particular the governance reforms that we've been taking forwards through the Commission of Inquiry implementation. And then thirdly, more broadly, I have been resolved from the very first day in this job to make my contribution to helping build a better future for the islands as well. And that encompasses a whole range of activities, many of which sit outside of the governor's direct responsibilities, but areas where I think the governor can help and support. Whether that's creating opportunities for young people, whether that's helping with initiatives to preserve and protect the outstandingly beautiful environment here. There's a lot I think that this office can bring to the efforts of other branches of government, people working in the voluntary sector, to help build that better future. And I hope over the course of this first 11 months in the job, we've been able to make some progress and make a positive contribution in each of those areas.
Okay, so let's focus our conversation mainly on the issue of security, because especially at a season like this, that is one of the areas that you look out for, because, things do tend to get a little on the other side. But based on what we have been seeing, the growing instances of especially gun crimes, the communities are becoming a whole lot more tense, while they seem to be a pattern of targeted persons or areas. The wanton operations of these persons committing these violent crimes, not taking into consideration the community, go after who you want, and you care less for who gets caught in the crossfire. How are you placing these need for increased security and protection on your list?
Yeah. So I'm very conscious of the concerns that people have, and when I'm out and about around the islands, when I stop and talk to people and just have spontaneous conversations in the street, or when I'm at Bobby's or Right Way doing my shopping, the theme they always want to talk about is security, law and order, and that's completely understandable because it's something that touches all of our lives. We all want to live in a safe and secure environment. I think there are a number of ways of building that security. There's no sort of single fix, but there are a number of different elements working together that I hope can help achieve that. One of the areas I'm directly responsible for, of course, is the police and also the prison. And I've got a very strong interest in the wider law enforcement sector. And one of the things that I'm endeavouring to do, but working in partnership with colleagues, is to help support the efforts of the RVIPF to build capability and capacity to investigate crimes successfully, to be able to bring criminals to justice as well. To do that effectively, I think, requires a number of areas of engagement and support. So, for example, we've been able to provide practical assistance and training to RVIPF officers in particular specialist areas. Just recently, we've had a team from the UK's National Crime Agency helping with financial investigation training, as an example. There's also, I think, a role for the UK to play in terms of assisting the way the force sets its priorities and structures its activity. We had back in the summer the Law Enforcement Review compiled by His Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary Fire and Rescue Services, and that had a number of recommendations relating to the police which would help address precisely those issues, sort of systemic areas.
Are those some of those recommendations? Are you open to discussing what they might look like?
Yes, I mean, I think the RVIPF have been making good progress, and they touch on areas which are quite diverse. So, including, for example, having a proper workforce plan in place through to specific areas of building operational capability, and that I think provides a good menu of interventions, some of which the RVIPF can deliver within their own resources, others where the UK can support and assist. But I think there's something around building systems and capability which I like to think we've already made some progress in. I think I'd also, when I reflect on how the police force is working, I think I'd note the question of resources. We are happily now in a position where the RVIPF has got a good complement of officers. I attended myself the passing out of the most recent cohort, which was great. Something like 18 new officers, including some auxiliaries, which passed out up at the college. And they provide great additional potential in terms of skills and experience that they can bring into the police force. So ensuring that resourcing in terms of human resources is where it needs to be is also critical, gives you that baseline. But then capability in terms of equipment and vehicles, again, we need to assist. And through the UK government, we've helped, for example, in recent years, build the ability of the Marine unit to respond. Because obviously, being a series of islands, there's a fair amount of criminality which occurs out on the waters. So through providing vessels, providing equipment for the officers on those vessels, I think we've helped to provide that capability as well. But ultimately, you need to have an approach to each of these areas where the police intervention is required, which is coherent, where the systems support the front line, and where the partnership with the community is working effectively as well.
When you look at the systems that we currently have during your period of being here, have you been able to work through in collaboration with the United Kingdom to boost those systems that we have? We see the more the more you do as an entity, the RVIPF, the more the criminals, I would say it out loud, plain, are becoming more strategic and more blatant in their work. And what seems to be of major concern to the people of the territory is, when would we get to that stage where we are usually a step ahead?
Yes. So I think, like you, I want to achieve that. I want us to move from being in a reactive mode to being ahead of the curve and being able to be proactive. One of the routes to achieving that, I think, is the work that the RVIPF are doing in terms of building their strategic planning capability, which I think has been progressing well, and it's an area where we've been able to support in a number of ways. So, for example, the National Security Council, which previously used to meet on an ad hoc basis, we moved that to a monthly rhythm of meetings shortly after my arrival. We now meet every week.
Okay.
And we meet every week because that gives us the opportunity to, with the police commissioner or acting police commissioner Vanterpool, the opportunity to look at the situation in the round at the moment and consider areas of criminality where we can provide immediate direct support to the RVIPF. But also meeting on that regular basis enables us to become a bit more strategic as well. And we're developing a forward plan which will enable us, both with the police but with the other law enforcement agencies, to consider where the gaps are in terms of capability and delivery, where things are going well, where there's success we can build upon, but also where we can help address issues or deficiencies, and also foster this sense of cross-agency working as well, because many of the problems that we face do not sit within the remit of just the police or just customs or just immigration. So having those agencies working together successfully is a really critical element of finding our way through on all of this.
Okay, we've improved the marine sector a great deal. We see the opening of the new marine base. We've seen a new vessel in place. Since those, have we been able to see striking improvements in terms of how we patrol our waters?
So I think the capability to patrol and to intercept and disrupt criminal activity out on the waters has certainly increased. The challenge, and these are operational policing matters, so not for me to go too far down into, but the challenge, of course, is to deploy that capability effectively. And there you're drawing on professional judgment, sources of information. But I think we've put in place, both through the equipment we've been able to provide, the engagement with and training of officers, and also, as you say, the creation of that joint marine headquarters, a great capability there as well. I should say as well, Kathy, I mean, inevitably, and it's a natural thing, when we talk about security and law enforcement issues, we tend to focus on the front-end policing response, or the front-end work of customs officers or immigration officers who make an enormous contribution in this space as well. But I think another innovation we've tried to bring over the past year is to think about the whole of the criminal justice system and take an end-to-end approach.
I was getting there.
Okay, sorry, I'm leaping
No,
ahead.
but let's talk.
So for example, I now chair a monthly meeting of a criminal justice advisory group, which brings together all of the component parts of the criminal justice system. And that is already delivering greater connectivity between those different agencies, but also giving us an overview of how, if one part of the system is working very efficiently, that may come up against a delay or an issue in another part of the system. And what we're looking to achieve is a smooth end-to-end process. So one really important piece of work that we've now embarked upon is reviewing our criminal rules of procedure. So to ensure that when a case comes to court, the handling and processing of that case is as efficient as it should be. As people say, justice delayed is justice denied. And I think we would all accept that there is progress for us to make in still ensuring the proper and correct administration of justice, but doing so more efficiently. And I think the engagement across the board from everyone involved in this process has been extremely positive. We all want the same ambition. We all want to deliver the same outcome. But through the revision of the rules, we're able to take a systematic approach. That work will continue into the months ahead and into next year. But I think, again, it illustrates, I think, how this isn't just about the police. It's not just about arresting people. It's going through the whole criminal justice process. And critically, it's also ensuring that the prison serves the interests of the wider community as well. So, as you know, the responsibility for the prison is a shared responsibility. It sits with me, and it also sits with Minister Wheatley as responsible Minister for Health. But we work together very closely on this. It's a great partnership, and he personally takes a very strong interest in the work of the prison, for which I know all the prison team and myself are extremely grateful. But I think the prison is a particular area of focus. It's a challenging environment up there. It's a prison built for around 80 inmates, and I think we've got something like 120 there at the moment, so it's a bit cramped. We've got a large number of prisoners up there on remand rather than serving sentences. But that comes back to this question of resolving the way the criminal process, the justice process works. But I think we're also, and I pay tribute to the team up at the prison, this is their work, not mine. We're also developing an approach at the prison which is offering more rehabilitation alongside the punishment of serving a sentence. So it's developing that capability so that if someone is serving a sentence, they have an opportunity to consider the circumstances or the issues or the behaviours that brought them to that point. So there's a whole suite of learning modules are available to prisoners now. It's looking at scope there might be to acquire a new skill. So I was up there just last week, and it's fantastic to see they've now created a carpentry workshop up at the prison. So those that already have skills in woodworking or who want to develop them can work in that workshop, develop a skill which may help them once they've completed their sentence, but also make a contribution to life at the prison too. So I think it's expanding that rehabilitative aspect of the prison, which is another crucial piece in this jigsaw. What we don't want is for the prison to almost be like a training ground for people to develop skills that will help them become career criminals. The experience of going to prison should be an experience where you come out of that and you embark on a different pathway. So again, that end stage in our whole procedure, I think, is critically important, because that is still a vital place of intervention where individuals can take a different pathway once they've done their time.
And I can see where you alluded to the capacity of the prison for which it was built, and it being overcrowded, being a major hindrance to you achieving that objective. Is there a plan for any time in the future to have that facility extended? Or on the distaff side, how expedient are we when it comes to looking at the system to make sure that persons who are there on remand pass through the correct system within a very short, narrow window?
Yeah. So I think the improvements in the rules of procedure on the criminal side will help with those numbers on remand. And so, obviously continuing to follow the correct processes, but managing down those numbers over time will create some additional capacity there. My sense is that the prison staff are managing magnificently in what is a busy and crowded environment, and there's a lot of creative thinking going on in terms of how to accommodate a complement of inmates, which goes beyond what the prison was built for. I'm not sure anytime soon we're going to be radically expanding the infrastructure, building new wings or anything like that. But I think there is a process in place, including through the way we're managing the throughput of remand detainees, which will help with managing those numbers.
Yeah.
Well, yes, and also, just moving away from this situation where, people are spending extended periods of time on remand at the prisons because the way our criminal processes are working, we're not working as rapidly as we want to. But as I say, there is a great determination on the part of all involved to fix that issue. And the discussions we're having in the Criminal Justice Advisory Group to resolve that, I think, are progressing well.
In terms of human resources to meet the direct needs of the prison, how are we?
So, Superintendent Kendall, I know he's working very assiduously to ensure his staffing levels are where they need to be. I think we all work in a challenging environment. None of us have as many staff as we would like to have. But I know that the engagement he's having with Ministry of Health, and obviously through the resource management and budgeting process for this year, is very mindful of the need that he needs adequate staffing to both ensure that the prison is a secure environment, but is also one which provides rehabilitation as well. And it's not just about staffing. So one of the reasons I was up there last week was to meet with a team from the UK's Ministry of Justice who were visiting to help completely refurbish the locks at the prison. Okay. So this is quite interesting. Over the years, the system of managing locks and keys at the prison was not what it should have been.
Okay.
And that was creating issues both in terms of the security of the prison environment, but also, frankly, in terms of the safety of the people there, because if you can't find the key for the lock and something's going on, you're going to be at risk. So we had a team come over from the UK who work systematically going through all of the locks and all of the provision of keys, replacing and refurbishing and upgrading, so that we now have not only a much more secure system of locking the prison and keeping it secure, but a much more efficient process for the prison officers to navigate their way through the various locks, because we've rationalised all the keys. That sounds like a very baseline thing, doesn't it? Having locks for a prison. You would assume that goes without saying. But it was actually a really important finding of the first volume of the Law Enforcement Review, and one which we've now been able to completely resolve thanks to support from the UK's Ministry of Justice. And it makes for a much safer and more secure environment up at the prison.
And that lends also to securing the prevention of things that are prohibited items from entering into cells and into the prisons itself, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. So another thing we've done is we've been able to provide a comprehensive radio network up at the prison, which is helping in all sorts of ways, allowing the officers to remain in much closer direct contact with each other. But where people do attempt perhaps to bring articles that shouldn't be inside the prison into the prison through whichever route, the ability for the officers to be in touch in real time and rapidly by radio is helping prevent that. And we've given them some smart new uniforms as well, so that also, it all helps. But I should say, for me, the prison is a great example of this really important piece in the jigsaw, where support from the UK, great leadership up at the prison by Superintendent Kendall, can really help us turn the corner on how that facility functions. And it's a facility there that is to serve the whole community of the islands. And I'm optimistic about the direction of travel. Okay.
One other area for us to touch on is that of, we know Commissioner of Police Mark Collins is, I think his time is now expired, and the process of getting a replacement, someone to succeed him, we know that you would have put out a notice there where the previous application process has expired without you finding the suitable person that's needed, and you give a reason. That reason, if my memory serves me well, is that looking at the structure and the advancement of the criminal activities that are happening in the territory, we need to have persons there with those that knowledge in dealing with what is developing into a really bad situation here in the Virgin Islands. Talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we launched the process to recruit the new police commissioner back in May, I think it was. And, we did that very correctly, and it's a process which I, as governor, am not directly involved in. My job comes at the end of the process, where the selection panel has identified their recommended candidate. That then comes to me. So I'm not directly involved in the recruitment process itself. But after that process was launched, we took delivery of the first volume of the Law Enforcement Review. And that already illustrated a number of areas within the police, as well as the other law enforcement agencies that needed attention, and in particular needed great leadership. We're now working towards the submission of the second volume of that review, which I expect will come in the early part of next year. I haven't seen it yet myself, but I understand that will include a further series of far-reaching recommendations for the law enforcement community, again including the police. And it's been indicated to me by His Majesty's Inspectorate that as far as the police is concerned, some of the recommended changes will be, quite major recommendations for transformation within the police force. It comes back to these questions of systems and approaches. So with that knowledge, I felt that we needed to rethink the person specification for the next police commissioner because we had new information. And my judgment was that obviously we'll be looking for someone that's a very experienced police officer that knows a lot about the administration of law and order and security. But we also need someone who will be able to deliver quite radical transformational change in a complex organization, with a lot of moving parts, that is itself dealing with a range of diverse challenges, some of which we've discussed. Youth criminality, gun crime, burglaries, the marine challenge as well. And it therefore seemed to me that we had to stop the process that we started in May, wait until we could take delivery of the final version of Volume 2 of the Law Enforcement Review, and use that to help guide us to redefine the person specification that we needed. And that seemed to me to be the correct approach. It also seemed to me to be the fair approach, because I didn't feel that we could continue with a process where we would be recruiting people against a specification which we knew was no longer the specification that we needed for the future. And I know that would have been a disappointing conclusion for everyone that had applied and everyone that was still going through the process. But I felt not to do so would have been a worse option.
So you're saying it is not a situation necessarily where those who would have applied are not necessarily qualified, but it's a situation where you want to see the completion of a process to give all the specifications and go through again.
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing to do with anyone who may have applied in that first round of the recruitment process. And again, as I say, that's not a stage in the process that I'm involved in, so it's not an area where I could make any judgments one way or the other. But what it is to do with is the nature of the person that we need. And knowing what we know now, the qualities and experience and skills, it's clear they will need to be different to what we thought we needed back in May.
Okay.
So that's why stop the process, pause for thought, digest what we get in the second law enforcement review, the second volume, and then we'll restart the process. We're not going to waste time on this because police have got a lot of important work to do. But I would hope we'll get that new process started early in the new year with a view. I mean, I don't know, these processes can take several months, but I would hope, late summer, early autumn, we'd be in a position that we'd have our new police commissioner in place.
What do you say to those who have the opinion that this has been done because the governor really needs to get a UK official there at the top?
I mean, that's not correct. For me, this has nothing to do with the origin of the successful candidate. What I want to ensure is that we have a candidate that meets our person specification. And frankly, it makes no difference to me where they come from. What I will want to see in the recommendation that ultimately comes to me is a very clear demonstration that that individual has the skills and the experience and the ability to deliver the changes in the policing here that we need. And I say that without any sort of criticism of previous or current police leadership. It's nothing to do with that. It's because the environment that the police are operating within is evolving. It's changing. The complexity of the criminal landscape is increasing. And to be able to deliver that in that environment effectively, we need a leadership that can transform the current organization. So, I know some people have commented along the lines that you describe. People can have their opinions, that's a matter for them. I can just speak to what are the facts of the situation, and those facts are that it's nothing to do with where the person may or may not come from. It's all about getting the right person.
Awesome. Quickly on the issue of CCTV, that's been a major concern. We are seeing some going up around the community, but how drastic are we, for the lack of a better word, in ensuring that this territory is covered when you have eagle eyes?
So I think, CCTV is important in law enforcement and security. It makes a significant contribution in investigations and just observing what's been happening in the United States after the recent murder in New York. The CCTV has played a significant role. So it's an important tool. And that work continues within the islands. I would say, though, alongside having an effective CCTV capability, community engagement is absolutely critical as well. And indeed, it was community engagement which played such a significant part in the case in the States.
Yes.
Took that particular sequence of events in that branch of McDonald's. That was individuals, being observant, calling the police, playing their part. So I think the question of community engagement alongside whatever technological capability we've got remains key. And I think there is, moving forwards, more that we can do to help foster, those positive relations and trust and confidence between the community and all the law enforcement agencies. One initiative which I'm hopeful will contribute to that is, it's actually one of the recommendations from the Commission of Inquiry, and that's to introduce vetting in the police force, the immigration service, customs and prisons. And we're making progress in bringing those steps into force. And I hope that will provide a level of confidence throughout the community that the officers that they're interacting with have been through a vetting process to help provide guarantees in terms of their integrity. Critically, I hope it will also help provide a level of protection to the officers themselves. Vetting is all around having a proper understanding of the circumstances of the officers in whichever service it is, and helping protect them from any vulnerabilities that could be exploited by others. So, we've developed a very, very clear process where once we start with a vetting unit established, officers will have an opportunity to set out their circumstances on a form that will be considered by a team of vetting experts. Where there are issues, those issues will be discussed. There'll be an emphasis on an approach to help officers resolve those issues, so that will enable them to continue in their roles with that level of confidence of protection, but also, I hope, generate wider confidence amongst the community as well. Vetting isn't about catching people out, it's about protecting officers, and it's about generating confidence within the communities that they serve as well.
Okay, as we close out this conversation, which I appreciate greatly, you touch a little bit on a few areas of the completion of the recommendation of the Commission of Inquiry. Where are we now in terms of assent so that, we move off? I know the next step for you is to give your I think, final quarterly report. How are we in there?
Yeah. Just before I come to that, and that's a great question, Kathy, and I'll
Yeah.
be very happy to give you an answer on it. Can I just share one final reflection, which I touched on, but I think it's also another theme for the coming year in terms of our effort on security, and that is not just looking at our processes end to end through the criminal justice system, but it's also broadening out the partnership across every agency, every department, every ministry, every organisation that can help contribute to, providing opportunities for young people, which, take them away from potentially less productive pathways. And I think a job for me in the new year is working with colleagues across all of the aspects of community here in the Virgin Islands, looking at models that we've tried in the UK where you're bringing together the law enforcement agencies with organisations that have nothing to do with law enforcement, but who can help build opportunities and pathways for young people which are more productive.
Community service organizations.
Yeah, and ministries and agencies, and the talent in these islands amongst young people is so remarkable. It's so outstanding. I was at the Elmore Stout Christmas concert over the weekend, and the musicianship there was just amazing. So there's lots of enormous talent here, but we've got to provide opportunities for that talent to find expression, and also for young people to discover their talents as well. So that's a role of partnership, which I hope as we move into the new year, working with others, I can help just flesh that out more. On the COI, so we're at the stage now where the recommendations that have gone through the process of discussion in the House of Assembly that have come to me, I've assented pretty much to all of them. There's just one or two left which I need to deal with. We then need to ensure that those recommendations are brought into force. So my discussions with the Premier and others are just ensuring that we've got a clear plan for the entry into force of those pieces of legislation. And then as we move into next year, we'll go through a process of assessment. There'll be a number of elements to that process. One of them, as you quite rightly say, will be a final report from myself as Governor. And that will be very much in keeping with the other quarterly reports that we've seen for the past couple of years now. My last one was at the end of May, because obviously we moved into new areas thereafter. But I'll aim to get that done in the early part of next year. We'll also look to the elected government to provide its own sort of self-assessment of how things have gone and where they feel the process has got to. We'll aim to provide a mechanism so that members of the community, members of the public, can provide their own views. We'll work out the precise mechanics of that, but I'd envisage just some form of channel so that people who want to express a perspective on how the COI process has gone have an opportunity to do so. And I would imagine as well that we'll have engagement from colleagues in the UK as well. They may visit, they may connect by Zoom, they may have interactions with colleagues in the government here to help better understand in more of the specialised areas where progress has got us to. All of that to be done in the early part of next year. Then Minister Stephen Doughty, who visited here just recently, will consider that volume of information, which, if we do our job properly, will be a very rich volume of information. And we'll take a view on where we are. And I expect he will give a recommendation to the Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, and then we'll take things from there. So we've got, I think, quite a clear process that lays ahead of us in that sort of first half of next year. Ultimately, the decisions will be for ministers to take. But I think as a result of the recent visit by the minister, discussions that he's had with the Premier and myself, and indeed, of course, Premier and Minister Doughty saw each other again at the Joint Ministerial Council just recently in London. I think we've got a clear pathway for that assessment process moving forwards.
Okay, and looking at things from the time you got here, from your background, information that you would have gotten when the COI was called and all of that, when you look at the territory, look at the operation of government as is right now, your level of comfortability that, hey, we are going to be making progress here, or we are making progress.
So I've been struck, I think, by the very positive levels of collaboration between myself, my office, and the Premier, his team, the locally elected government. And I think, as we said at our joint press conference a bit earlier in the autumn, there have been real highlights in that collaborative approach, and I like to think that's delivered good progress with this stage of implementation of the recommendations that we're going through. I think also I've been incredibly impressed by the commitment and professionalism of the public officers that have had to do the hard work on the detail of all of this. And that extends right across all the departments, the Attorney General and her chambers, really, really great, committed, devoted professionals doing fantastic work there, often under pretty tight deadlines as well. Looking forwards, I think for me the one key area which has got to be a priority for all of us is the practical implementation in everyday life of the legislation, the protocols, the codes, everything that we've put in place as we've gone through this process. Because ultimately, go right back to the COI report, all of this is about improving
good governance. You want to see good governance,
and it's service to the people who live here in the Virgin Islands. It's how it touches their lives. It's the real world difference that the whole process is supposed to make. So the focus on implementation, I think, is absolutely critical moving forwards. And I know the government have got good work in hand on that.
Awesome. Governor, I take it a pleasure you accepting my request for a sit down. It's been a few months, but at the close of the year. But I want to give you the opportunity as we close out now to say to the audience what it is you want to say to them in a nutshell, seeing it's the end of the year, probably your season's greetings to them.
Well, thank you, Kathy, and it's great to have the opportunity to talk. And you're always welcome whenever you want to come and have a chat like this. It would be great to see you. And I think my message to your audience would firstly be that I hope everyone has a joyous and peaceful festive period. As I say, I've certainly already enjoyed my participation in the Christmas celebrations here, and there are so many Santas around the islands. It's incredible. You're bumping into inflatable Santas and plastic Santas and even a real Santa.
Human Santas as well.
So Santas everywhere. But also, of course, it's a time of year for reflection as well, for supporting others in the community. And obviously, it has a deeply spiritual aspect as well, which is important. Looking ahead to 2025, I'd wish everyone every success as we move into the new year. And I'm certainly looking forward very much to continuing my own experience here in the Virgin Islands, getting to know everyone here still further, and have been grateful for the very, very warm welcome that I've received here so far, and look forward to that continuing.
Awesome. Going around, you've tried the tart. Which is your favorite? It's usually a war around this time to know whether it's the coconut, the guava berry, the guava, the pineapple. Which is your favorite, Governor?
It's got to be guava. It's obvious. I can't see any controversy.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. We're on the same page. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for taking some time out to sit here with us and listen. And we wish you and your entire family compliments for the season. I'm Kathy Richards. Thank you so much for joining us.
We know that where you choose to bank matters, and it is your vote on what your funds do in strengthening our community. As your official Bank of Paradise, we invest and support the lifeblood of our economy by helping in the realization of personal goals for homeownership, education, and entrepreneurial visions, which support small businesses. We make it our place to connect with persons and worthy causes, and we have been doing so for more than 30 years. Where your money goes and what your dollars empower are your choice. And we thank you for choosing us, a bank that gives where it matters the most, for you, for our community, and a happier tomorrow. The National Bank of the Virgin Islands.